Hi everyone, it's Mark here again. I'm the founder of the Arts and Culture Network. We're a growing global community of over 140,000 around the world across our 8 LinkedIn groups. But this is the best bit of the job for me. It's where I get to introduce you to one of our full members. And I'm delighted that Joe Mangrum has joined me today from just north of New York, I think. Joe, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon as well. That's the nature of our global community.
Yes, it
So,
is.
um, excellent. What we're going to do today is I'm going to create your fantasy cultural year from the answers to 10 easy questions. I found it's a lovely way to pull out anecdotes, surprises, conversational detours, and your preferences. So, and often some laughter. So. Um, Excellent. Now, but before I do that, what I'd love to do is to give you the chance to say hi to everyone and tell us about the work that you're doing. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull your website up and share the screen so that we can show people the work. And perhaps you'd be kind enough to give us a bit of a walkthrough.
Yeah, yeah. I've been making ephemeral art forms for over 30 years now, as well as more permanent works like the one behind me. And so I've started out using flowers and seeds and berries 30 years ago, and then transformed into more of a hieroglyphic language uh, of those objects that I used into sand. Um, when I moved to New York in 2008. And so I've been using sand, and I uh, took to the public spaces of New York City, and then got commissions and the fashion world, as well as Volkswagen, and done things at Museum of Art and Design in New York, and several different institutions around uh, 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 the Do Museum in the Netherlands. Been part of the Sharjah Calligraphy Biennial in the Emirates, as well as MoCA North Miami and the Young Museum in San Francisco. And this one is just sand painting I did during the time during COVID here in Kingston, New York. So that's
It's
just
staggering. It's beautiful stuff. What I don't understand is how you manage to maintain the symmetry over over quite a large space. What's the secret?
uh, uh, practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
It's I just find a natural sort of geometry in my work, and you'll see like this one is 7 pointed symmetry, and I'm not going for a mathematical symmetry, but more of an organic. My work is based in uh, different cultural patterns, as well as like circuitry and sort of bioluminescent creatures, deep sea creatures. You'll see some Celtic knot patterns, and different references to like electrical currents or Richter scale type of things, and just different patterns we see in science and nature, and you know uh, Venus flytraps and sort of different organisms. The idea is to bring all these together in sort of public spaces, and look at different relationships of our culture, as well as inside the urban grid. Um, how that contrasts these, like planting these little organisms within an urban space. These are other installations that go back as far as 1994. Um, the pyramid that you see there is from the Florence Biennale in 2003. That took on another um, different, political sort of things. These were done in the Bay Area back. This was 2005, I think. United We Fall, sort of a pyramid of gold, and protecting a globe of oil at the top. This was right after 9/11. It's called United We Fall. and it's made from bullets and sort of a white powder inside test tubes. It
Right.
was during that anthrax scare that we had, and sort of the idea is that we're always vulnerable in terms of you know when we unite in war, we're always vulnerable to these different attacks and things like that.
Well, I've had so much fun browsing through all of the work that you've got here on the website. So I would urge others to do the same. So it's at joemangrum.com, and it's just beautiful and thought-provoking, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for giving us that quick tour. Now we're going to go on a global tour together, pretty much. Um, I'm going to create that fantasy cultural year, and to do that, I need to place you somewhere in the world. So could I ask you, what's your favorite building?
My favorite building. Wow. Um, I'm really, as far as like in New York, I would like in terms of the building I would love to create in is the Oculus in New York City. It's the gigantic white floor that I'd love to be able to create a sand painting for weeks on end to fill up. That's always been sort of the dream. But yeah, hard question of what uh, you see that
That's
as.
it's just stunning, isn't it? Um,
Yeah, it's amazing architecture, and it's got this big open space and the mezzanine all the way around it so people could view the artwork from all above, and I just think that would be an amazing venue for my work.
it would. There we go. Okay, so thank you for that. Now you've given us a starting point. So I'd like you to imagine that you're sitting outside the Oculus within sight of the building at a pavement cafe. Okay.
Hmm.
And there is a drink next to you. It's 6 p.m. on a June evening. What would I find on the table next to you?
Little cafe, like what am I eating? What am I drinking?
What are you drinking?
Uh, I'd probably have a IPA and nice afternoon warm, cool beer on a warm day.
Excellent. And there's a book on your left. What would I find next to you? It could be your favorite book. It could be a recent discovery. It could be a book that's been with you all your life. What would I find next to you?
Uh, wow. Uh, I'd say probably The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell.
Okay,
I always enjoyed exploring Joseph Campbell, and it really inspired a lot of my work in these comparative mythologies.
fantastic. The Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell. There we go. Excellent. Now you're feeling quite pleased with yourself because you've just come from a meeting inside the Oculus, and you met a wealthy New York-based family foundation who have fallen in love with the work that you do, and they would like to hire you for a year. Okay.
Mhm.
It's extremely well paid, and they'd like you to travel the world and meet up with other sand painters and do work together in crazy places around the world. Okay.
Mhm.
It's first class all the way.
There's only a few of us.
Yes. um, and then, and so there is a book deal in it. They want to create a coffee table magazine from the year that you'll be spending traveling the world doing this. There'll be a TED talk on when you get back. There'll be a university lecture tour around the world, and a TV show as well. So it's a lovely
Let's
opportunity.
go.
Let's go. Yes. So all you have to do is to decide where you're going to start. We're going to do some country hopping, but where would you like to start that? Good ideas.
Um, I'd love. I always love Italy, Spain, Portugal. Just there's a history of sand painting in in Spain particularly. But just um, I'm game to go anywhere. I've traveled extensively around the world. I've probably been to 30 some odd countries in my day, and I really I was just recently in Portugal actually, and really enjoyed it, and Spain, and
Okay.
so
I think we'll
so.
go. I think we'll go to Seville in southern Spain, uh,
Mhm.
and there is a wonderful square with the Heralda, the cathedral there, and I think that might be our first point of of departure. So you're on the plane, okay?
Mhm.
You turned left when you got on the plane because you're traveling first class. The steward brings you a nice cold IPA and a nice cold IPA and a note from the Family Foundation, who have a condition that they'd like to impose on you for this. And that is they want to experiment on you a little bit. So they'd like you to limit your musical listening to one very specific genre of music for 12 months to the exclusion of all else. Okay. What would you choose?
Wow. Probably indie rock and hip hop, but it'd be so hard to say. Like
If you had to choose one of those,
I'd probably go with the rock and roll, like the indie rock
indie rock.
from the early 90s.
Okay, that's yours. Now, you get to Seville, and there's a group of young artists there who've been detailed to welcome you and get you settled in. They take you to a beautiful apartment overlooking the Heralda in the center of Seville, and they say, right, unpack, relax, and make yourself at home. We're going to come back and take you to a dance performance, and then out to dinner. Now, because this is a magical fantasy year, I have both a time machine and a magic wand. And I can put any dance performance you like on that stage. It doesn't have to be Spanish. So you could have any dancer, living or not, any dance group, any dance style. What would you love to watch for a couple of hours?
Um, I would be totally into flamenco.
That's okay. Okay. There is a wonderful concert hall. I played in it in Seville called the Maestranza, and my brother used to live there, and he's a cellist, and he lived quite close, but he had to pass 14 bars to get there, and often on the way home he wouldn't pass them all. So the Maestranza from flamenco, excellent. Um, and then dinner. Now, Seville is a cosmopolitan city with all sorts of national cuisines on offer. What would you choose? What country's cuisine would you like? It doesn't have to be Spanish. And I have a magic.
Yeah. Um, I'm there, like I love any type of seafood, and I'll eat anything, to be honest. Like I've always like I think people connect through food, and the most we share the most experience over food, and breaking bread with people in different cultures has always been a fan. But if I really love Indian food as well. I eat it quite often. So,
Well,
but
my magic wand has found us a fusion Indian Spanish seafood restaurant.
okay, great. Excellent.
Yeah, I have a
So
strange
fish
habit. I have a
curry and shellfish, right?
Yeah, I have a strange habit when I go out to dine. I never choose what I have. I'll message my daughter or ask the waitress, or I love it to be a surprise. I'm a bit like you, I can eat anything,
Mhm.
but I love it when it's a surprise, and I often find myself really enjoying food that if I'd looked at the menu myself, I would not have chosen. So I like to experiment in that way. Excellent. Okay, now we're going to jump on another plane to go to another country. Where are we going?
India.
India. Any specific part or city?
I think the South to really experience the Rangoli and cultural experience of that.
Okay, I'm trying to think of a southern city. Let's get a choice.
Uh, yeah, I can't off the top of my head. I can't remember the. There's a particular.
Um, yeah, there's South India. There's Bangalore, uh, Hyderabad, or Chennai. So
Chennai, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, let's go to Chennai. So we get there, and it's sport day in Chennai. And again, you can watch any sport you like. It'll be the World Championships happen to be happening in Chennai. So what sport would you like to watch for a couple of hours?
I'm not really a big sports fan. So, but I would, if I were to choose something, it would be probably American football.
Okay, so it just so happens that do you have a team that you support?
No.
No. It, it just so happens that there is a championship going on in Chennai. All some of the big American teams are on tour.
For giggles, we'll say San Francisco 49ers.
Okay, the 49ers are doing an exhibition tour in Chennai, and we'll go to that. Excellent. Now, in Chennai, there is a new digitally enhanced art gallery, and you can put on a pair of virtual reality glasses and step into the paintings of a famous artist. You can walk around in it. You get it in 3 dimensions, despite the fact that we only see two. 360 degrees. You can choose any famous artist. Who would you choose?
Fred Tomaselli.
Right, this is a new one to me, so I'm going to look him up. How do you spell it? Tom. Oh, found him.
Tomass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Fred Tomaselli. Oh, look at that. Right, I'm going to share my screen again so that our guests can enjoy it. There we go.
Yes.
Um,
Collage and resin and
there he is. That's Thomas. That's Fred, rather. And then
yeah.
here's some of the work. Wow. There you go, everyone. If you haven't come across Fred before, here we are. Fred Tomaselli, Tomaselli. Excellent. Okay. So we're going to fly again, and I'm coming out to meet you for a week of cultural enjoyment. Okay, while you're on your induction period. Where are we going next?
Um, well, I want to go to London because if you're
I'm there.
based in London, I want to know more about, I've been to the Tate Modern before and Whitechapel Gallery and things like that, but I'd want to know your experience and what your favorite spots are and
Excellent.
what's new since I've been there last.
Okay. That's fine. So we can so we're going to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. On Monday, we're going to a historical pop or rock concert with the time traveling machine we've got.
Bowie.
On what was that? Bowie.
David Bowie.
Okay, we're going to go back
London
to
1971
yep,
or whenever Hunky Dory came out.
yep. That's Monday covered. Excellent. I'll enjoy that as well. A theatre play.
Um, well, if you're in London, you got to do some Shakespeare, right?
Yeah, we'll go to the Globe. Um, and do you want something, do you want a comedy or a tragedy or a historical?
Let's keep it light. We'll do the comedy.
Okay, we'll do Midsummer Night's Dream then. There we go.
Sounds good.
What about a West End or a Broadway musical?
Uh, wow. That's not my thing. I've seen Lion King and Wicked and a few others, but I've not been a regular in the theater, unfortunately.
Okay. I think we'll go to the first night of Wicked with Adina Menzel and Kirsten Chenoweth in the leading roles. Excellent. Are you an opera fan, Joe?
Um, I do enjoy it. I have a friend who's an opera singer, and I not something I see all the time, but it's
Do you like
I'm
do you
always
like
game.
do you like it modern or traditional?
I like more traditional, I think.
Okay.
Uh,
So I think we might do La Boheme Puccini, and your friend is in it. There we
all
go.
right.
And then a film for Friday. What I'd like you to think of a movie that you love that I may not have seen.
Hmm. Uh, hmm. You've probably seen them all. The only thing that comes to mind is the Blues Brothers,
Oh,
uh, the
fantastic.
original.
The original
Uh,
John
you
Belushi.
know, yeah, it's one of those movies that I just have seen over and over and over again. So
Yeah, I'm going to watch that tonight now that you've kindly reminded me.
it
Um,
is just packed with cast of characters and
yeah,
just all the way through.
yeah, that's going to go
Classic.
on my watch list. Thank you for that. Excellent. Now, we're nearly there for your induction, and then you're going to go off and travel and do all of this wonderful work, meeting other sand artists and doing great work in world famous places like the floor of the Taj Mahal, for example. Um, and but before I leave you to it, I'm going to give you a hero lunch. Okay. You can invite one person, any single person to lunch, living or not, famous or otherwise, and they will turn up. Who?
Living or not, famous or otherwise.
Yeah.
Uh, hmm. Oh, you know, if it's hmm.
The tricky one.
I've always wanted to meet David Lynch.
Okay. Filmmaker David Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in a slight twist to this question, who do you think David Lynch would invite?
Wow. That is hard to say. I would think probably a writer or someone else. I couldn't tell you.
I'll make a suggestion then, I think.
All right.
I think he and you and he would love to be joined by Alfred Hitchcock for lunch.
Yeah,
That would be
sure.
that would be a great lunch. Fantastic. Excellent. Well, there we go. That's your fantasy cultural year. I hope you've enjoyed it. When shall we go?
I'm
Yep.
about after the 1st of January. I got a
Yeah.
few things to do.
So, Joe, thank you so much for being a good sport and doing this. This will
Sure.
we'll do write a profile about you for the website. We'll go on YouTube, SoundCloud, and Spotify, um, and where all our guests and website visitors, and then we'll pop it on LinkedIn so that people can get to meet you and understand more about it. So it's joemangrum.com for the work.
Hmm.
And again, thank you so much for being one of our full members. It's very much appreciated, and I hope you've enjoyed your fantasy cultural year.
Excellent. Sounds great.
Thanks, Joe.
All right.